do want to get into the schedule because it did drop this week, and I kind of wanted to get like your reaction to it. Which game are you looking forward to the most, and just the overall schedule, just like a 30,000-foot view of it?
Yeah, so I think, when you look at the schedule, obviously, the initial reaction is kind of, oh, like this is pretty tough. But at the same time, I think one thing that's important to remember is any schedule is going to look pretty tough when you come off a season where you lost 28 games in a row and had the worst record in franchise history. And naturally, your schedule is going to look pretty tough, and you're not going to be super confident in how many you're going to win. But having said that, that first week is going to be fascinating. And, for me, I immediately, just because, maybe this is part of me wanting the drama, but I immediately look at, October 25th in Cleveland, JB Bickerstaff going up against his old team, division rival, the Michigan, Ohio thing. I can imagine, especially, with a guy like a Jalen Duren getting all physical with a Jared Allen and Evan Mobley, I can see that game being a barn burner. And, I'm not saying JB is going to come in and push this rivalry between him and his old team. I think if anything, he's just going to treat it like any other game, but almost kind of similarly to when the Pistons would play the Raptors when Dwayne Casey was the coach. I think anytime you're playing for your coach against his former team, you have extra motivation to want to go out and to get a win on their behalf. So I think that's going to be pretty good. And then the fact that they have to play Boston literally the next night is criminal. I think like whoever put together that schedule just must have a real gripe. But I think other than that, I mean, I want to see like how the Pistons can do. Especially it's that first stretch of the season was always going to be tough for me. It's how can they do after the All-Star break? And listen, the first part of the schedule is pretty tough, but I mean, they have an opportunity after the All-Star break to have some decent wins. Maybe not when they play Boston or Denver or Golden State or Clippers, but my point still stands. There's stretches in here where they can chain together some wins, but it's definitely, especially over the first month, I think we're going to learn a lot about where this roster is day one and just how much they have to grow.
Yeah, same here. Shout out to Eric Vincent watching on Facebook.
My guy.
Yeah, had him on a month ago. First time I ever had him on, and I think we talked for almost 2 hours. We just hit it off. Shout out to Eric, man. Really good dude. So I actually made a graphic for people that haven't seen just like the first 10 games of the schedule, and I'll put it on the screen for people to see that are watching right now. Like,
it's
to your point, Sean, like these are the first 10 games. And if you look at it, like I asked fans, it's like, what do you think the Pistons record will be in the first 10 games? And I got like, some people are trying to be funny, like 10-0, 9-1. But realistically, like I'm looking at it, like I feel like you could beat Indiana if they're not like at full gear, because their offense is just like crazy, just efficiency wise. Like, and it's a home opener. The fans are going to be there. It's going to be rowdy. It's going to be loud. To your point, JB going back to Cleveland, his second game, I think the emotions are going to be really, really high. I really do. But he knows those bigs. He knows Jared Allen. He knows Evan Mobley. He knows that team with the back of his hand. So he'd probably know how to prep for that team better than anyone. But to your point, a back-to-back with Cleveland and Boston, to your point, yeah, bro, that's criminal. Like I don't know what the Pistons did. If we're still getting, punished for the malice of the palace, let it go. Like like let it go, man. But like, yeah, the first 10 games of the season, man, they're absolutely just brutal. Like that's a top 10 game stretch.
Yeah, just in that list alone, the two of the three teams that made the Eastern Conference Finals, the team that was in the conference semis, the other team that was in the conference semis, the Miami Heat, another conference semis team in Philly. Like it is literally just heavyweight after heavyweight after heavyweight. And that's the NBA. You're never going to really have too many stretches where you're playing against inferior talent. But when you talk about really proving grounds and seeing what this team is capable of, and especially if you're looking at, okay, how do they avoid, having a disastrous stretch like last season? They're really going to have to, put together some wins against some of these teams. And I know like we're thinking about like what would be a good record. I think if they went out of that stretch at 4-6, I think that they would be thrilled. At 3-7, I think that even though they wouldn't say it publicly, I think they would take it.
Yeah, I mean, like, I know a lot of fans, and we'll probably get into it later, but like a lot of fans this time of year, like expectations, like because we haven't watched basketball since April, and they're like, I think this is a play-in team. I think this is a playoff team. It's just like you look at the schedule, and it's just like, man, if they don't, start the season off, at least to your point, winning like 4 games, 3 games, even 2 games, you could have a situation where it's creeping in the back of your head. This guy's lost 28 straight. We brought back a lot of the guys that were part of that 28 straight losses team, and I think for them they have to come out aggressive. They have to come out strong. I don't need them to finish 5-5. I don't. If they do, I'd be ecstatic. Because I think a lot of these games are going to be closer than people expect because you have vets like Tobias out there with Cade that could be a secondary option. You have guys like Malik Beasley, Paul Reed, Isaiah Stewart, I think isn't going to be forced to be your starting power forward anymore. You could have him more as an energy big off the bench if you want, or maybe a backup center. I don't know. You've addressed a lot of areas of need, and you have year 4 of Cade, year 3 of Ivy and Duran. Like I think this team is going to win more than 14 games. I do, but I kind of want to like temper the expectations because I see some people like, yeah, man, it's a play-in team. If Ivy takes a jump, if Duran takes a jump, and everyone takes a jump, it's like, guys, like that schedule is tough. To your point, those were all like really deep playoff teams.
Yeah. And, I think, obviously when looking at, like what the win total, like I don't think, competing for a play-in spot is out of the question, but I think people also have to recognize if they were to get a 10-game win jump from last season, if they were to get to 24 wins, I know fans don't want to hear it, but that would be a great season. That would be a victory because you are heading in the right direction and you are getting double-digit win increases, especially off of what you had. And, I know, fans don't want to hear that because, you almost want to just, move off of last year and just not let it set you back. But the reality of it is when you go through a season like that, you do start over from a lower point. You do have to build your way back up. And I think like a lot of the things that, JB Bickerstaff and Trajan Langdon like really talked about is they want to make it fun again. Like I think people, like obviously there's a pressure, like this is a business. People want to come in and, and succeed. But I think a lot of young teams, you get so miserable going through the woes of losing that you forget you're playing your childhood passion for a profession. Like this is still basketball at the end of the day. And so if you're not having fun, how are you going to go out there and actually succeed? Right. So I think like, I know people might scoff at that, but I think that's something the Pistons sorely missed last year was someone who had the perspective of make this fun.
I think to your point, because I remember JB Bickerstaff saying, I want to make it fun for guys. I want them to come into work excited to learn, excited to play basketball, excited just to, be together. I think sometimes what gets lost in coaching is these coaches have one speed and it's just basketball.
Yep.
I mean, if you really want these guys to succeed, you have to get to know them off the court. You have to get to know like these players as human beings and off the court, because if you do that, I think JB has that ability. They're going to play a lot harder for you. Like, I know for a fact, like Isaiah Stewart, Cade, they love Dwayne Casey because Dwayne Casey, he had 2 gears. Like he could talk basketball with you all day, but he could also, communicate with you outside of basketball as a human being. And I think last year, not to take a shot at Monty, I think Monty just had that 1 gear where it's just like basketball. And he would kind of shade you if you played bad in a press conference. We saw it multiple times last season. Certain players got called out each and every game. I don't really think he had that ability in that locker room to kind of just switch it off. Be like, guys, like, you want to practice today? Stuff like that.
Yeah.
Because you could tell, like, during the 28 game losing streak, like, they had like no confidence in themselves whatsoever.
Yeah, I think I think especially over this last year, again, not like you said, it's not to take shots at, um, it's not to take shots at Monty, but it's pretty clear there was a disconnect, in the locker room there, and there wasn't that same cultivated relationship between the coaching staff and and the roster as there was when Dwayne Casey was in the building. And I think listen, I think Monty is a guy that does really well with veteran rosters. And, I think especially in Phoenix towards the end there, he's with a lot of veteran players. And I think Monty can succeed in a veteran locker room in the future. But I think there's something to be said about being able to, work with a younger group of guys, knowing their shortcomings and being able to work alongside them. Like, I don't want to look at hindsight too much, but I almost wonder if the DeAndre Ayton situation should have given Detroit more pause before bringing in a Monty Williams, because obviously you look at it from the outside looking in, you could certainly look at, DeAndre Ayton, a lot of the things he does. And obviously he's a real character, right? But he's a 23, 22-year-old kid on a roster full of 27, 28-year-old men, right? Like, of course he's going to act dumb. So, I think, like the thing, with him, with Monty towards the end was he just didn't have the patience for it. Right. And I think, with JB, one thing about him is that he just has a contagious energy for, teaching and for working with young guys and seeing them succeed. And that's what he's done at every stop he's been in. Even before his stop in Cleveland, he was in Memphis, did really good work there. Like, JB Bickerstaff is just a solid developer and a good teacher. And one thing that I think he's really good at, by the way, too, is I think he's a really good communicator. And that just sticks out right away. And, especially when you're talking about teaching and helping players develop, that's a huge thing that the Pistons needed badly.
Yeah, I think if JB was the coach that replaced Dwayne Casey, I think this team would be in a completely different situation. And this is not me trying to say, like, if JB was here last year, that 28 game losing streak wouldn't have happened.
Right.
This is more me saying, like, I think JB was that type of coach, like that development coach. Like, I know a lot of people, like, during the process, they were really high on Charles Lee and Kevin Ollie, like, young guys that just didn't get that head coaching opportunity. I think JB is a mixture of, he's had success, but he also knows how to work with young guys and make it fun and has a clear-cut plan. Like, during the presser, like, he broke down how Jaden Ivey and Cade Cunningham could play together. I never heard that from Monty Williams when, players asked about it. He's just like, yeah, they're good players. Like, really excited to be here. The JB's just like, yeah, we got to stagger them. He's like, I think they can play in transition together. It's just like,
well, Cade, I think he can play 3 positions. I think he can be a 3. Like, like he can do multiple different things.
Yeah, it's a breath of fresh air with JB Bickerstaff. And it's a guy that you didn't really have to bribe to come here. It's a guy that, he said openly he wanted to move to California with his kids and just take a year off. But he said Trajan called me and he gave me his plan and he believed that I could get that plan done. And he's just like, man, I'm in. Let's go. Like, I absolutely love hearing that.